Welcome back to Direct Edition. I'm your host, Davey McDavidson, the Davinator. That's me. I hope everybody's doing well. It is Friday, October 18th. The weather is a balmy 52 degrees, and it is 8:59 p.m. And here's your weather with the weatherman. I figured I'd just turn up the goof factor a little bit, since the last time you heard me talking to this microphone, we were a little serious.
Why so serious?
I don't know. The Joker. What a great character.
Oh, but Hollywood ruined it with a musical.
Yeah. One of the things that continues to bite my ass, is that even a phrase? I don't know. But one of the things that continues to bite my ass is the way that movies are. Let's hold on. We're gonna bring that back. I used to go to the movies a lot. Circa even the first 5 years that I lived in Washington, which would be 2014 through 2019, pretty much right before the pandemic. I would go to the movies because I worked freelance. I'd go to the movies during the week, like sometimes once a week, sometimes twice a week. Just was a walking distance to 3 major movie theaters in Seattle. And I was a little less tired, so I could go see a movie in the middle of the daytime, and I'd stay awake. But I'm a little older, and I feel like the pandemic, I think with everybody in general, it's just like a blanket statement. We all aged a little bit more than we actually did in years. But I remember how excited I was to go back to the movie theaters for the first time during the pandemic. And I think it was to go see Tenet, the Christopher Nolan film that came out with Pattinson and John David Washington. And I still have to see that movie again. Ashamedly, I've only seen it once, and it blew my mind, but it also kind of warped my mind. And then Dune came out, and I definitely hustled to see that in the theater. And, it felt nice to be back in the theater after, just even the shutdown and all that. And then I think the pinnacle of that was seeing No Way Home, the last Spider-Man movie in theaters during the pandemic. And, I love that movie. But just like every industry, during and after the pandemic changed for the worse when it comes to costs across the board. Like, cost of making movies went skyrocketing, and protocols had to be put in place for, distancing and making sure people weren't getting sick. And then, everything else gets more expensive by that. It's a trickle down effect. Marketing gets more expensive. Theater releases become less. Tickets get more expensive. The movie theaters they're never going to be what they used to be. And it's a shame, because it was a safe haven for me, a place I could go and shut off the real world and my world for a while and really get lost. And I still love movies, and I just don't watch as much as I used to. And I fall back on favorites. I'll watch Social Network, or I'll watch any of my favorite movies. I watch Jaws every year. I watch Halloween on Halloween. I watch The Crow on Devil's Night, which is the night before Halloween. Comfort films. I watch Scream every year during the spooky season, because I just fucking love that movie. Next week, I'm going to see The Witch, the A24 movie with Anya Taylor-Joy. I'm going to see that at the IMAX, because A24, which is, if you don't know A24, they're the best movie studio to come around in the last 25 years. And The Witch, I fell in love with that movie. I'm going to see it in the IMAX at the Seattle Pacific Science Center, because A24 has been doing this thing for about a year now, where they're releasing 3 movies in 3-month periods, older movies that they've released, but in IMAX. So I'm excited to see that. But after the pandemic, things just kind of, I don't know, everything was just different. But the other piece of that is the way that movies are talked about before they come out. It's like, we used to look at before, if you're as old as I am, then you remember what it's like just to see movie reviews in the newspaper. And then, you could talk about stuff like Siskel and Ebert. Those guys were, they were literally the Rotten Tomatoes of everything before Rotten Tomatoes existed. Like, those two guys would review movies, and that might make or break a movie, or it might force, it might have people go see it, or it might people have go, depending on the way that they talked about it, people might see it as like a pushback against their opinion. Like, if they thought a movie stunk and you're like, oh, well, I'm going to go see it. I'll judge for myself. Like, that's the whole thing about a movie review too, is like, you're really it's supposed to force you to judge it for yourself. Like, here's what we thought. But, to think that you can represent how you're going to digest a piece of art by what somebody else says, when there's X amount of billions of people on the planet, But these days, it just feels like the consensus is to destroy a movie based on an agenda before it comes out. And it's, I guess, kind of like, I understand the seed of that coming from agenda-driven art, but like, art has always been driven by the person, or, like a sole piece of art. Fine. Yes. We're talking about two different things, but, companies, they're going to make movies based on whatever their values are. I mean, whether you like it or not, like Disney, after kind of the Walt Disney era, because he was a fucking racist and just a piece of shit. But when they started to turn that company around and make family-friendly movies, like, that's their agenda, is to make family-friendly movies based off mostly liberal, or liberal-leaning principles, which, like, honestly, that's not a bad thing. Like, what are the lessons you're looking at? Like, if you go see some of the biggest, like, Disney or Pixar films, like, you want your kids to see that because, like, they are pretty morally conscious. And if we're not making morally conscious kid stuff, well, we're headed for fucking disaster, right? Like, Star Wars is very morally conscious. Now, in a little cynical way, you can flip it on its head and say that, oh, well, Luke and Han and Leia, they're all terrorists. Well, yeah, if you side with the fucking evil empire, then of course you're going to look at Luke and Leia being terrorists. But where was I going with this? Oh, agendas in film and stuff. But I think the pushback on, like, some of these bigger voices in the internet space, because honestly, like, we have to also call a spade a spade. Newspapers, media, like, that shit is going, it's the way of the dinosaur. The internet is the new, or it has been and is the new way that people kind of not even just get their news, but kind of form their opinions, right? Like, I mean, like, you're listening to this podcast based off the internet, so, I get it. But what I'm trying to get to is, I've started to see this thing, and I guess the beginning of it really goes back to episode 1. When Star Wars episode 1 came out, 1998, it was like the internet was just starting. But over the course of that next year or 2 years, like, people, maybe it was even after Attack of the Clones came out, people started to bash the shit out of that all over the internet, and became the first kind of like piece of pop culture that had come out when this entire new network of talking to each other is being born. And hence you get, like, the first viral hated movie in a way. Like, I know that news outlets, there's a lot of interviews you could watch in 1989 that people were bashing the idea of Michael Keaton playing Batman. But that only goes so far, right? It's not like everybody's watching the same news broadcasts and seeing the same interviews. But episode 1 becomes the first thing that I can remember. And, I was 19 years old, so my memory was pretty fresh on that. I can remember people just being, like, across the board hating it. And my love for Jar Jar Binks kind of stems from being the pushback of people hating him. Jar Jar Binks is no more annoying than C-3PO. I don't give a fuck what you say. Like, C-3PO is by far as annoying, if not more annoying. Anyway, I started to see it, obviously you can document seeing a lot of this hatred coming from Marvel and Star Wars both being sold to Disney, and people being like, oh, those things are ruined and it's so woke and it's this, that, and the other thing. And I'm like, it's fucking Disney. They are who they've always been. It's not like, and like, first off, George Lucas is a fucking liberal at heart and will always be a liberal at heart. And all of his movies were made from that point of view. Watch them and actually realize what you're seeing. But they tried to make him be like, oh, he's a racist because of Newt Gunray and the Asian sounding characters and Jar Jar Binks. It's like, I don't know. Should every alien sound like a white person? I get it. Maybe it was overdone, but that doesn't mean that it was racist. So two different schools of thought. Racism is hatred, and over the topness and goofiness is just that, But anyway, Star Wars really suffered from it. The pushback against Last Jedi, and whatever you thought about that movie, that's fine. But if you're one of those people that's like, oh, well, Rose shouldn't be a main character because she's a woman and she's Asian, like, you're just an asshole. That's it. That's your point of view, is the point of view from an asshole if you're judging somebody based on their race or being a woman. Oh, you can't have that in the Star Wars universe. Well, actually you can, because it's not real. It's fictional. Now, I know I'm preaching to the choir here. Most of my audience, or I assume all of my audience, is a little bit less, more empathetic, more on the side of like, hey, I'm not a piece of shit or misogynist or racist or more, just an idiot. Maybe you are. I'm an idiot. Anyway. There is a lot of things that I watch from the sidelines, and I try not to partake in the conversations online because they don't get you anywhere. I partake in the conversations that I want to have, not the things that, that make me enraged, because that shit just doesn't go anywhere. But it started with the Marvels, the movie with Brie Larson about Captain Marvels, all the Captain Marvels. I started seeing, because I do watch a lot of internet stuff just to try to, I want to, as much as I don't agree with a lot of the really dumb shit or all the dumb shit that gets said from the, like these stupid, just really, whatever. I like to at least see what other people are saying so I can be like, okay, well, I listened to them, or I listened to this side, and I listened to this opinion. I may not agree with it, but at least now I can be informed. And what I would see is that like 4 months before this movie came out, people started to talk about the Marvels and it was garbage. It was going to tank. The ticket sales were low and all this stuff. And I'm like, that's kind of weird, because nobody talked about any of these other movies before they came out, whether the ticket sales were good or not. You hear maybe 2 or 3 weeks before, okay, pre-sale tickets for the, the first, week of shows for Endgame are like, tracking to be $150 million for the first night or whatever it is. You hear when it's like a super success, but you never heard about anything that was either, just median, like status quo, or something that wasn't performing well. And I would see these YouTubers, and I would look at these people that stuff were reposting in stories on Instagram. Like, it's unavoidable if you're on the internet. And obviously I am in every capacity that you know me in. And I was seeing all this negativity towards it before the first fucking trailer even dropped. Like, the poster comes out and there's negativity about it. And I'm just like, this is not normal for anybody that's over the age of fucking 30, or maybe even over the age of 25. Like, how kind of movies roll out. Like, you get the announcements, you get the other cast announcements, like you get the main cast announcements, and then you get like some of the bit players. You get your first poster, you get your first photos from the set, and then you get your first teaser and the trailer. I swear to God, the hatred started coming out before the first teaser came out. And then obviously the first 2 trailers come out, and it's just like a pile on. Unfortunately, I've come to expect this from the male-dominated comic space, and once again, whatever you thought about the movie, I'm not even talking about the movie because it hadn't come out yet, but you just hear the rhetoric, the talk, the way these people say that the nasty snide kind of like, oh, well, I don't hate women, but this movie looks like it's gonna fucking suck. Who is this made for? And like, that question's always my favorite, because if you're an adult male not even adult male, let's just say a teenage male, or like an 18 to 72 male. And you think that the Marvels was made anywhere in your direction? What are you thinking? You're just angry. You're just saying that, like you're just being hateful to be hateful. That movie, well, okay, look, that movie was primarily made, probably, I would assume, for young girls. It has 3 female leads in very strong roles for themselves. For me, I mean, I like movies, so I don't, I'll watch movies that aren't made for me because I might like them. I'll watch anything with Brie Larson in it, happily. So there's that. But I just remember hearing all this hate, and I'm like, well, yeah, this movie's gonna fucking bomb because look, these people are, and it brings, and I will get to more of these movies I want to talk about, but it brings to me this whole thing that I see, and I don't think I'm special, but I also am old enough to grow up and form my own opinions and kind of like see things for what they are. I am, in a world of a lot of people that have attention deficit, ADD, ADHD, whatever. I have the opposite problem. Like I pay attention to too much hyper-focused. And so, I see it for what it is. And I see that, like, if you have a voice, a channel, a podcast, a social media account, a show, whatever it is, that has thousands and thousands of followers, maybe even 1 million followers, it doesn't really matter what the reasoning is. When you say something, people are listening. So if you're like, this movie's gonna suck, but you're not actually, you're not expanding on why you think this movie is going to be terrible. You're just kind of saying like these bullet point things, like statements, almost, verbal clickbait. I mean, the clickbait on the thumbnail and the title of the whatever it is that's promoting this is going to get people to click. But you can literally just say like very base sentences and people will listen, and this will form their opinions. And that's what I'm starting to see. And I know I'm not the only person. I know this is a bigger conversation because if you look at, Donald Trump, that's what he does. He just says things. He says sentences. Most of them don't make sense. And most of them aren't based on fact, but they're buzzwords because we slowly, or maybe not even slowly, we quickly went from a reading society to the BuzzFeed type society we've become, where it's just like fucking sensationalist sentences and top 10 lists and things that don't have any depth to them. It'd be like reading the tagline on a movie poster and saying you saw the movie. Like, oh yeah, I fucking love that movie because he's a one-man army, and I love type movies like that. I'm like, it's kind of that way, and I hate to really say it, but it's a very sheep mentality of like, oh, this person said this thing, so I'll just follow, I'll follow that. And so I would see, I can't even remember because I had to like block a lot of these channels from my YouTube feed because I do obviously spend a lot of time on YouTube. That's where you all know me from for the most part. And because I would like click on it just to see what these people were saying. I'm like, it's so fucking cringe, It's so hard to hear people talk about women and stuff that are like, it's weird. It's very weird to me to have people like use nerd culture to be shitty people. And it's something that, and it's a bigger conversation. I definitely said it on an earlier podcast about how like the co-opting certain characters, certain symbols and whatnot for the opposite of what they're intended for. Like these shitty people that cite Captain America and like try to make it like like a war machine thing. Like he was created by Jewish people that escaped atrocities or fought in atrocities. You gotta keep in mind when it comes to comics, most of these major characters were created by 3 or 4 people. They were all Jewish. Some of them escaped the Holocaust. Jack Kirby went over to fight the Germans. It's like It's like, you can't turn this on its head. It's just like, it comes from a place of Chris Claremont writes the X-Men, and it's all about like people that have faced, racism, any type of, prejudice towards them because of who they were by, skin color or religion, whatever it is. Anyway, I digress. So we fast forward from the Marvels because it did tank. And I'll tell you this, you want to say you didn't like it? That's fine. You want to say that it wasn't fun? That makes no sense. That movie was fun. We fast forward to earlier this year. The long-awaited Mad Max saga, Furiosa, came out. Anya Taylor-Joy playing Furiosa. Chris Hemsworth playing, I can't remember the character's name, but this is from George Miller, who is the creator of Mad Max and, obviously directed all the movies and all that. It's whatever it was a decade after Fury Road came out, but also Fury Road came out 20 something years after the last Mad Max movie came out. So that's not an arguable fact, which is something I see. Oh, well, if they didn't wait so long to make Furiosa, it's like, what? The first fucking Mad Max movie came out when I was like 1. And and Fury Road came out when I was in my 30s. So, whatever. So that's not a real argument. But, I remember I saw the first trailer and I'm like, I don't know if I think this is going to be good because it looked too CG heavy. And then I went to go see, this is what it's called, forming your own opinion, right? Based on what you see. And then I saw the trailer in the IMAX theater in Seattle, and I was with my friend Aaron, I believe. And I said to him, like, fuck, this looks so amazing on an IMAX screen. And I was sold right there. Because I'd seen it in a proper, like the color, everything in the balance of the screen was fine. And I'd seen it on other screens after that, and I felt the same way. It was just seeing that trailer on a computer or TV didn't do it for me. And so that movie was coming out, and you start to hear a couple weeks before, like, this movie's going to flop. It looks like it's not going to make this kind of money, blah, blah, blah. Now, I didn't directly see too much like negativity on the internet about it, but I wasn't looking and I wasn't like clicking on anything, but I think it was there because the movie flopped. Nobody went to see it. I know the box office on it ended up making just above budget, but I went to see that movie. I was determined to see it. When I hear about something that I know that I think it's, like, I have a pretty good sense at things that I'm going to like. And, without being like a weird egomaniac, I also have a very good sense of like movies that are going to be really good objectively, because it's something that I studied for, I almost made it my career. And so I was really shocked to see that, like, nobody saw it. It didn't do well. And I saw it, I think, a week and a half after it came out, maybe 2 weeks, at the former Cinerama in Seattle, which is now the SIF Uptown. And holy fuck, that movie was great. First of all, that movie was beautiful. It was action-packed. And where Fury Road was more of a video game plot, go to point A to point B, back to point A, and there's the end of your game, right? Which Fury Road's a fucking masterpiece. I thought Furiosa was a better story. It was a story. And I don't know if I think it's better than Fury Road, but it's on par. And my friend, everybody that I know that saw it said the same thing. Like, it was fucking awesome. And I just can't wrap my head around like how this movie tanks. But, when you go on, let's say, look, and once again, you have to remember that this is how people, like, Rotten Tomatoes isn't even the aggregator. Like, it's not even like, it doesn't move the needle as much as it used to. Whereas YouTubers that talk about movies, review movies, that's where people are looking, or Reddit. And if you go and like look at some of the big YouTubers that reviewed Furiosa that are negative leaning, like, those videos have hundreds of thousands, if not millions of views. And I just keep seeing this kind of weird pattern of, oh, well, this person said it sucks, so I'm not going to go see it. Or this person said it sucked, and I think it sucks. And, if you really want to damage your feelings about humanity, you start looking at the comment section. And I don't even mean like there's disgusting stuff in there, but there's all these people like, oh yeah, it's shit. And then you start to think, well, if all these people said it's shit, how come the movie didn't make any money? Because to say that it's shit means you had to have seen it. But if the box office doesn't reflect the fact that hundreds of thousands of people have seen it, then something's not right here. And once again, I think it's just the influence of people saying buzzwords and people agreeing with them in ways that they're probably not telling the truth. And so that was really disappointing. And I watched Furiosa again very recently because it was on HBO. So I put it on one night. I'm like, I'm ready for my second viewing. And you know what? That movie was just as fucking awesome the second time around. And look, I'm not saying that my opinion on these movies is what you're going to feel, but I'd really be hard pressed for you to sit down and watch Furiosa and you say, I did not enjoy that. And then I go look on, what YouTube channel was I just looking at? Nerdrotic. And I was looking at the Furiosa video comments, and people were saying stuff like, oh, well, if it didn't come out 10 years after the fact, or, whatever. But then I saw a lot of people echoing the same sentiment that I said. I saw somebody wrote something like, I saw it in a movie theater with 12 people, and I can't understand why people weren't going to see this movie because it was fucking awesome. And I don't get it. I don't. Like, now that kind of goes back to what I was saying at the beginning of the little, well, now it's like a 22-minute rant, but what I was saying at the beginning of this rant is that the movie theater experience isn't what it used to be. It's more expensive. If you're like me, you're not incurring the mass expenses. I'm just buying a ticket. I rarely get anything to eat. I just bring a water with me, and I'm happy to just drink water in the theater. But if you have kids, or you're going out on a date, you buy 2 tickets, you buy popcorn, you buy soda, you're talking $55, $65 at this point. Now, that's not forgivable. I think the movie theater experience is a byproduct of the Hollywood, everything becoming more expensive. But I think their response should not be to raise ticket prices. I think it would go the other way if they lowered them back to maybe like $10. You don't rape people when they're trying to buy popcorn and soda, and more people start going back to the movies. Because when it goes from being a $40 experience or $50 or $40 experience for 2 people to a $65 experience, people are less likely to come back. But when you go from a 65 back to a 40, I think people would still go back. But I could be wrong. I do not know. I'm not a one-man focus group for the entire country. So that was Furiosa. Now we get to Joker 2. Now, I saw Joker 2. I love the first one. I love the first one for one of the reasons why I really give DC movies a little piece of my, they get more of my attention. And this is why. And it's not that I like them more. But Batman characters have been interpreted in so many different ways just in my lifetime. But we could just go through the movies. The Tim Burton stuff was a darker, campier. So it was influenced by 66 in its camp, but it went dark because that's Burton's style. The Joel Schumacher ones were colorful. They reflected his personality. I can't really give Batman and Robin much talk because every time I've tried to watch it in the last 10 years, I'm just like, I can't. I like Batman Forever though. So then fast forward to the Nolan movies. The Nolan movies reflect a more realistic world of Gotham and a more paramilitary world that we live in. More pro, that kind of thing. Now, Nolan's not pro-military in that way, but he is one of those people that will show for what he sees the world as. Those movies are fucking fantastic. And then we go to the new one, Matt Reeves's vision of Gotham. And we're only one movie and half a TV show in, but his vision of Gotham is kind of more in line with the comics than pretty much, or at least the last 25 years of comics. Like if you read the Loeb Sale Long Halloween and you look at you look at what Reeves is doing, he's definitely more in line with that than anybody else has ever been. But that's just live action movies. We've got, obviously there's the Adam West TV show, and that was its own thing, like so unique to itself and of the time, but still fucking amazing. And then if you want to go to the animated series, it's probably the best depiction of Gotham best depiction of Batman and all the characters outside the comics. The original Batman animated series, Bruce Timm and Paul Dini. The video games, you could probably just shove aside the original, like Nintendo and all that stuff. But the Arkham games are a fucking fantastic, amazing adaptation of the world, of the Batman characters. And then Gotham, the show, was like a bastardized child of Tim Burton, Adam West, and like a little bit of everything. It wasn't that great, but it was also like, you couldn't stop watching. It was so ridiculous. And that's the thing, like, if you ask Matt Wagner, he'll tell you that Dracula is the greatest literary character of all time, and I can't really deny that, or Sherlock Holmes. But what is Batman? He's Dracula and Sherlock Holmes. And so, the Snyderverse stuff is what it is, and there's some stuff about it I do like, and there's a lot of stuff about it I don't like. But there's always something interesting about, like, there's a lot of polarization when it comes to the DC movies. And it's because people know, I think a lot of people know deep down inside, like, these characters have a tendency to be better characters for stories than the Marvel universe, because there's a little more depth to the writing. Now, and that's, I mean, all around. Like, Alan Moore never touched Marvel. Alan Moore was a DC guy, Vertigo guy, Neil Gaiman barely fucked around in Marvel. He was a DC. Like, all of these great writers have put their stamps. I mean, Frank Miller, his Daredevil series is great, but nobody talks about his Daredevil series more than they talk about Year One or The Dark Knight Returns. It's not like people go, oh, well, yeah, Frank Miller is the guy who wrote that great Daredevil run. Oh, and he also wrote Dark Knight Returns in Year One. No, it's the other way around. But what I'm trying to say is, you fast forward to Joker. I really like the first one. I think there was a lot of stuff in there that spoke to me, and just like, about how society treats people with mental health problems and just all that kind of stuff. It was a different take on the Joker. I'm not one of those people like, oh, they treated me like shit, I'm going to kill them all. But I was bullied a lot in school. So there's a piece of me and, that feels sympathy for somebody that gets picked on. But I liked Joaquin Phoenix's performance. And once again, it was just a different adaptation of a character that we've seen a bunch of times. And maybe it worked for you like it worked for me. Maybe it didn't. So the new one, Joker 2, was coming out. And I'm like, oh, this is cool. They're doing a musical. It's going to be weird. It's probably going to be like kind of like drug-induced weird. Like, I had my vision of the movie. Anyway, I went to go see it. It's gotten fucking destroyed by everybody. And, I enjoyed it. The performances were great. It really, I keep saying this to friends, South Park the musical was more of a musical than Joker 2 was. Obviously, they weren't singing Joker 2, Uncle Fucka, which is a song, in South Park. But anyway, do I think it was as good as the first? Not even close. Do I think it has its flaws? Yes. Do I think it was the worst movie that's ever been put out? Not even close. Not even fucking close. Do I think it was the worst DC movie? Not even close. Not even in the bottom 5 DC movies. But what I was seeing about that movie is the same thing I saw about these other 2 movies. People just fucking, like, as soon as they announced that it was going to have Lady Gaga and there was going to be music in it and it's going to be a musical, people just ripped it the fuck apart just by concept. And it's like, okay, all right, we get it. Like, somebody wasn't good to you when you were young, and that's why you're so angry at a movie that A, you haven't seen yet, B, isn't out yet, and C, wasn't even made at that point. Now there's a lot of people that said, oh, when the Joker movie came out, like, there's going to be violence at the theaters and it was pandering to incels. It's also made by a Jewish guy named Todd Phillips, who also, made The Hangover and it's like made some of the most successful comedy movies ever. But, all of a sudden he's pandering to incels. Come on, people. What the fuck are we talking about here? But anyway, this movie got ripped apart like to the core. I know people that ripped it apart. Oh, it's fucking garbage. I haven't seen it, but it's fucking garbage. I have no interest in it, but it's garbage. And that's the thing. It's like, whatever happened to actually seeing the thing before you ripped it apart? You know, or whatever happened to just not saying anything about it? You know, like, why does everybody have to? And I know this is kettle, or this is, well, no, fuck no. I have a podcast. This podcast has now run over 30 episodes. You are listening to this, then you are listening to it to hear me talk. I keep reiterating that it's probably more for me than it is for you. But why does everybody have to have a fucking opinion about everything these days? Why? Like, what? Why do you have to talk about things that, A, you have no interest in, and B, you haven't seen? Like, what is it now in humans that we have to talk about things that we, to the core, have no interest in? You do not hear me talking about football on this podcast because I don't watch football anymore. You do not hear me talking about sports at all, actually, on this podcast, unless it's something in my, in my past, because it doesn't interest me anymore. You don't hear me talking about the movie The Notebook. I saw it. Okay. That's it. I talk about the things that interest me, or the things that I digest, or the things that happen to me, but I don't sit here and talk about things. I'm not here talking about the environment because I have nothing to fucking say about it other than it's fucked. So what I saw with Joker was that, but the biggest question that I have is still the same one with these other movies. All of these people have opinions. Go into anything that posted about the Joker in the comment section, and people will say it sucked. How did this movie make less than $100 million if everybody on the internet said it's crap? And this is why, people are speaking about these movies as if they've seen it, because that is now the culture that we have. And I'm sure we could take cases in music and TV and comics and novels, and people will have these opinions about them, but yet the metrics don't reflect people actually taking this piece of art in, whether it, like I said, it's a book, a movie, whatever, comic. All these, another piece of the Bat universe is that Absolute Batman just came out last week, and there was some controversy surrounding it when they first announced it and they first showed the character design, because it's a new take on Batman. He's the size of a fucking Mack truck. The bat symbol looks like a seismograph that has just the biggest, fattest middle end and beginning. And people were bashing the shit out of it. And you know what happened? That book sold 250,000 copies before it came out, went into 2 subsequent printings. And it's like, then people read it and are like, oh, it's really good. It's like, yeah, maybe you should shut the fuck up before you take it in. Maybe, just maybe. And so it just kind of baffles me, because like you, my dear listener, you are probably like me in some way, shape, or form. You're into movies, you have your favorites, you like reading your favorite books, you like playing your favorite games, like you like consuming the things that you are looking forward to, or things that you enjoy. Like, I was talking to my buddy about video games. He's like, yeah, I don't, it's like, I'm just going to play the games that I really am excited for. And I love that, because this is what I enjoy. Like, whatever happened to enjoying things by default, or going into it being like, yeah, I'm excited for this, instead of, this fucking sucks. Have you seen it yet? No. It baffles me. And maybe that's a consequence of, growing up in a time where disappointment would come when you spent $17 or $10 for a movie and it sucked, or you spent $50 on a Nintendo game and it sucked and you couldn't return it. But now we live in a world where I literally bought a pair of pants, tried them on from Amazon, like they're workout pants. They're getting returned. They're too big. Now I have that option to just return when I'm disappointed. It's really disheartening to see where culture has gone so rapidly. It's not like this was, it's not like this was a gradual thing, really. Because Dark Knight Returns came out 15 years ago, whatever. I don't know, whatever it is, 15 years ago. And I remember I'm, obviously super excited to see it. I'm a Batman fan. I loved Batman Begins. And, I didn't see too many Heath Ledger movies, but I was excited to see his take on the Joker. I saw that opening night. I was like, holy fuck. And that was the last movie I can remember that like really got word of mouth big. I think Midsummer was another one, but nobody was anticipating that, unless you were an A24 fan. But I just kind of miss that. I miss that in my fellow humans. Like, default setting is excited or anticipatory or open-mindedness instead of, it's kind of like society is like Dave when Dave was 20. He was shut off. He was closed-minded. He was a fucking brat. He didn't want to listen to music that his friends would tell him to listen to because he was so set in his ways. And I was 20. And it was also 1999. All I wanted to do was listen to fucking Fred Durst, Jonathan Davis. I want to listen to nu metal and smoke weed. That's all I wanted to do. I didn't want to listen to Radiohead anymore. I thought that was too pretentious, that shit. Now I'm like, can't live without that band. Because I spent whatever it was, like 5 years of my life being a closed-minded idiot. But now I feel like the entirety, like the masses are like that. And maybe this is just what it's like to get old. Maybe my parents thought that the same thing about my generation. But I think it was the other way around. I think they thought that our generation was like into the fucking weirdest shit. And like, they were crazy. What's wrong with you? Like, I don't know. But anyway, I enjoyed Joker. I'll probably watch it again whenever it comes on HBO. And maybe I'll have a different opinion, but I like, I've seen Gaga in 2 of the 3 movies she's done. And when A Star Is Born, or whatever that movie was called, A Star Is Born, that movie was a depressing as fuck movie, but it was great. Like, it was extremely well made and well performed and effective. Joaquin Phoenix usually doesn't make bad movies either. It's not a bad actor. He's a great actor. I haven't seen every movie he's in, but Her is one of those movies that I keep going back to about how much I love that movie. I planned on talking about a bunch of different topics today, but we're I don't want to go too hard on this, but I want to just say, like, it's okay to feel this way. Like, if you feel like me and you're like, yeah, it kind of sucks where like everybody seems to have a negativity bias towards everything that's coming out. And the only thing that like everybody was super excited for and everybody reacted the same way, it was Wolverine Deadpool. And I need to see it again, and I really enjoyed it. But I still stand on the hill of that movie was everything it should be for a comic book movie about 2 superheroes that get on each other's nerves, beat the shit out of each other, and like there's a lot of fun, stupid jokes and fun stuff that happens. For a plot, that movie made no fucking sense whatsoever. No sense. There was not a lick of sense in the plot for that movie. But I didn't need it to be, because it's Wolverine versus Deadpool. But I don't want every movie to be that, because then you get the same thing. You just get fatigued because everything turns out to be the same thing. And you might have a completely different opinion about what I'm about to say about this. I did not have a problem with most of the MCU movies that came out post Endgame. I thought they were trying stuff. I thought WandaVision was great. I thought Moon Knight was great. I thought Multiverse of Madness was great. They were trying different stuff, just like comic book writers will try different stuff. And I still stand that, like, if you listen to a band that never changes, you're going to be out of that fucking band so quickly. And I think if you take your favorite band, maybe you take a band that that is beloved because they have 10 good albums, and you think about how much they've changed or tried different stuff. Like, look, say what the fuck you want about Metallica's discography post Black Album, but they are still around. And the tour that they did the last 2 years has been well received by more people than any tour that they've ever done. And I guarantee you, if you were to do a little research, you'll find out this is the highest grossing tour that they've ever done. And there's a reason for that, because they did not rest on their fucking laurels and make the same 5 albums. And yes, the Black Album is a fucking masterpiece too. They didn't make the same 5 albums for the rest of their career. And, relevancy also means that people criticize you, but you stay relevant throughout all of that, whether it's in criticism or praise. And for a band like that to do that, we're lucky. We are so lucky as music fans that they are still here. And, the core of them, James, Lars, and Kirk, are this, they've been the core since the beginning. And once again, you can still criticize some of the music. You can say what you want, but you cannot deny the fact that this band is still fucking awesome. So, and I feel bad that I didn't go see them on this tour, but everybody that did, and you know who you are if you're listening, you fucking love those shows. So, same with Pearl Jam, same with Radiohead, same with any of these bands that have been around since, you could say that about a lot of these bands. Anyway, where was I going? I don't remember. I've been watching Yellow Jackets, a little late to the game on that, but I needed something else new to watch, and man, that show's so fucking good. But I have not finished the first season yet. I know I'm a big fan of Lost, so I could see how many people were talking about like the parallels between this and Lost, but I know at some point people said that those parallels kind of go away. So we'll see. I'm enjoying it. Fucking Penguin's been amazing. Andrew's trying to figure out why people love that show. It's The Sopranos, but it's Gotham. It's that kind of vibe. Plus, Colin Farrell is undeniably amazing in that. And so was it Christine Milioti? She's also amazing. And yeah, so I've been just trying to find things to watch because I need to take mandatory breaks because I've been working so hard. And a lot of you know that I've been talking about how crazy it's been. Whatever it was, 7 interviews in 3 weeks. I've planned out 5 videos to come out during Halloween week. I've been going hard on selling books and buying books and selling books and running my business. So it's just been a lot, but it's been good. Me and Andrew P, who's listening to this before anybody else hears this, we are hard at work on The Many Faces of Jack Kirby, Volume 2. Which is a zine that we self-published this year as a tribute to the greatest comic book human being of all time, Jack Kirby, and the many faces that he used to put in to his comics, emotional, different. It's just, you got to see it. I'm not going to explain it, but you can watch the YouTube video about us flipping through the zine and talking about it. I think there's another topic. There's 2 other topics that I wrote down, but I think I'll just tell a funny story about a sale that I made recently. Kind of do a little bit of that insider selling, comic thing. I got told the weirdest lie this week. I did a pop-up sale on Instagram about a week and a half ago, or a week ago, I should say. And this guy bought just like an $8 book for me. He sent me a message and he said that he collects a specific character and he collects whatever, everything of that character, whether it be comics, cards, whatever. And so I said, all right, well, let me see what I could, dig around and find that you might not have. So I go into my like eBay closet where I have all the contents of what's on my eBay store, and I pull out a couple of things. I send them a message with photos, prices, and what they are. And then he lowballs me on one of the items. I said no. I just said no. He's like, all right, fine. I'll just pay your asking price. Yeah, of course you should, because it's still $20 cheaper than I should be selling it for. I was you got to understand, when you buy when you ask me for something and I go and get it, and I give you a price, that's the price that it's selling at, that I'm selling it at. It's not a negotiation. And you're not going to find it anywhere cheaper. So anyway, he sends me payment for that item. I had held the other item to ship these 2 things together. And so I think this was like on Tuesday. I was shipping it on Tuesday because the holiday was this Monday. And he sends me a message before I even get a chance to send him the tracking number. And he's like, oh, can you send me the tracking number? Because I live in a gated community and I have to submit the tracking numbers to them once I have the tracking numbers. And it was like literally like 10 minutes before I was going to print the label. So I sent him the tracking number. But you also have to remember, friends who are listening, you know this. I'm a former mailman. I'm a former mailman that delivered mail in one of the most expensive rich areas in Seattle. And a bunch of those pieces of the neighborhood were gated communities. And I thought it was kind of weird because that's not a thing. As a USPS employee, as a mail carrier, if your route has gates, combos, any of that type of stuff, I had I had a list, and then I memorized them. I had a list of codes to get into apartment buildings in Upper Queen Anne in Seattle because otherwise you are not getting your fucking mail. We need those codes. It is literally part of the USPS. Is like if you have locked boxes, stuff with codes, you are required to give them to us or pick your mail up at the post office every day. Anyway, so I was like, that's kind of weird. So I popped his address into Google Maps. I hit the Google Street and I, quote unquote, with the clicks of my mouse, drove around his gated community. Except here's the weird thing. There was no gate. There was no gated community. Literally, 3 right turns from his driveway puts you on the fucking highway without going through a gate. I'm like, that's a weird thing to do. That's a weird flex. Lie about where you live because you just want the tracking number, or lie because that's what you do. So weird. And I was just like, I'm flabbergasted at that. I'm like, okay, alrighty then. Like, everybody's got whatever it is that they're going to say, they're just going to say it, regardless whether you can check that fact. And I did. And the funny thing was, I was like, maybe the Google Maps thing is old. So I just typed in his address with the words gated community and fucking in Google, and the Redfin listing came up and the Truly, all the listings came up, and nothing about it being a gated community. And I know that if you have a house in a gated community and somebody's looking to buy it, and they want to see the value, like that's part of the description of the fucking house. Like that's a selling point of a house. It's a community. You're like safe, secure, quote unquote. Nobody is safe from me, bub. But I just thought that was awkward. I wish that I had kept a journal or like a folder on my computer with like screenshots of the shit that I've had said to me, the shit that I've looked at people were selling, like the posts on Facebook Marketplace, like since I started this, because I could totally have maybe created a piece of my website dedicated to the shit that Dave has seen, somebody charging $200 for a 25-cent comic saying the words, it's unopened, it's still in minted package, or to the many listings I've seen that end with the sentence, I know what I've got, to, just the weirdest shit. I definitely have some screenshots on my phone, but the interactions, the messages, all that kind of shit. It's a cabinet of curiosities, except those curiosities are fucking insanities and weird shit. Anyway, I just thought that was a fun way to end this kind of long ass podcast that I recorded today, is just by telling you a little story about a very recent transaction that I had. Thank you for listening to this. This has been a fun one. I did not expect to not hit all of the topics that I wanted to talk about. I did not expect to go that deep into this movie kind of shitty, criticism culture or whatever we want to call it. But I'm glad I did. This was something that was just on my mind a lot recently, and I was talking to Jacob, you know who you are. I was talking to him about today as like literally I went into the shower and we were in the middle of a discussion like on Instagram, and like when I got out of the shower I checked my messages and I had like 14 different fucking ideas just hit me in the shower of like topics to talk about, because I think we all have those bathroom moments where like it's the clear thinking, like we have nothing else to do but either shower, shit, whatever we're doing, and think. So anyway, it was just nice to expand upon those thoughts that I've had. But I'm going to keep this note, put it on my board for a future podcast, and we'll get to it. But friends, before we get going, I need your help. And it is not money, and it is not to save the whales. I want to say thank you very much for all of the response that came from the last episode. All of you that reached out with messages, I really appreciate it. And the friends who left comments on YouTube, it was a little overwhelming in a good way. But I also want to give a shout out, because I did say I would do this. The most recent review to come in through Apple is from Johnson. Johnson, thank you very much. And the 5-star rating that says, "Love this show!" ! Dave runs some of my favorite comic book channels, and this podcast is a great supplement. Interviews or Dave just venting a little, it's always good. Co-host Tim is always a treat. So Johnson, thank you for that. And that's what I'm asking right now, friends. If you could just, throw a star rating down on Spotify, throw an Apple rating with the maybe an actual word review, or throw a comment down on YouTube, hit the like button. Direct Edition is all over the place, and I am going to keep trying to grow this thing, even though sometimes I waver on, is it going to continue? But when I get that fire in my gut to record one of these, or I finally get an interview guest that I've been trying to get, it really lifts like kind of my motivation to grow this. And who knows what this becomes? Who knows where it goes? But without you, I have nobody to talk to, and it's just me yelling into a microphone. Although, doesn't really matter. I'm going to do it anyway. Let's be honest. Thank you for listening to this extended edition episode of Direct Edition, even though I said edition once already and now 3 times. God damn it, Dave. Come up with better words. Bye-bye.